Okay, hello everyone. So once again, we come to the live English YouTubers and Ken Clay is from UK and Rasa she's from USA. So today we will talk about the environment and spoken English. So if you have any questions, if you have any query, you can ask in the comment. So that our natives can help you, they can answer to all of your questions. So first thing we will discuss about environments because environment is more important nowadays. So Ken Clay, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So I hope you also have on environment and on spoken English. If our viewers will ask you the questions, so be ready for the questions. Okay. Okay.
I'm as ready as I ever will be.
Yes, I see you are available now. Okay, so Russell, can you please tell us a little bit about the environment? Environment was borrowed from French words. I just know this, and the meaning is the actions of surrounding something. So if you describe a little bit, it will be more interest for the viewers.
Okay, so I mean, we just had a summit in Glasgow, Scotland, right? I read a little bit about it and listened to stories about it. But the big thing that I got away is that we have to do something like as soon as possible to prevent the climate, the temperature from going up. Was it 1.5%, 1.5 degrees Celsius, I think? And so if we don't do something about that, and we have like very short time to do something about that, it is going to be detrimental to the earth. And I shared a video with you, Lila. I know that like for some strange reason you weren't able to watch it in India, but it was Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. It's a documentary. It's kind of dated, but 2005. But basically, I think what I like about that documentary is it shows, you know, a lot of pictures from like showing, okay, what the Alps look like 30 years ago and then today, but 2005, because that video was from 2005 or that documentary, and just shows you like the difference of like how our ice caps are melting and how you know, the glaciers are melting, and if this happens, if the ice caps, the Antarctica's ice sheet melts, if Greenland's ice sheets melts, sea level is going to go up. And if sea level goes up, it's like really bad for a lot of, you know, places in the world, right? They're going to be underwater. Island nations, like lots of parts of India. So that's like the biggest thing that I think the biggest, you know, the biggest thing with the climate, you know, global warming and everything, the biggest thing that we need to do something about.
Yes. So everybody know the importance of environment as it provides food, shelter, air, and fulfills of all the humans' needs. And the entire life supports of human depends wholly on the environment factors. Everybody know it's also helps in maintaining various life cycles on Earth. Because of the environment, we are also taking the breath. So what is the most important things of environment?
I mean, I think that was like one, like, because we have like this small little, like, basically like and I'm totally not an expert on the environment, just so you know, but I am very interested in it. Like, I've watched a lot of documentaries and I try to do my part. But basically, like, the atmosphere that we have, basically, it's a very, very small, like, layer that's protecting us. So, like, the sunlight comes in and normally some of it bounces back into space, but some stays so we can have a livable planet, right? But the problem with all the pollution that we have is that basically it's preventing that all of this heat from bouncing back. Like so now we're warming up too much, right? And so the problem with that obviously is that the ice caps are melting, the temperature is rising and stuff. So there's all kinds of things that spread from that. So that would be what I would think is like the biggest factor. I mean, like if you go to earth.org, it talks about poor governance and as being the number one factor. And what does that mean is because the different governments that are the biggest polluters of the world, including United States, I will take ownership of that. I'm not the one that makes all the rules for it, but we're not doing enough. We are not doing enough. We are polluting the earth more than like any other country, and we're not doing enough to make changes to protect the environment.
Yes, you're right. So we have some viewers. There. Hello, viewers. If you have any question, you can ask in the comments. If you have any question relating to environment and spoken English, you can ask. We have the natives, Russell, Dreaming English YouTubers, and Ken Clay is from UK. And if you have any questions relating to environment and spoken English, you can ask without any hesitations. Our natives can help you. You wanna define something on environment?
Well, we're looking at the environment, and obviously the Earth's environment, its climate is constantly changing. So the question is, how much is man helping to change or is adversely affecting the Earth's climate? Obviously, you have to look at the population explosion since potentially, the last century. Well, in the last century, given the fact that we're currently in a different century. So the Earth's population from the mid 20th century has absolutely increased exponentially. Your own country, Lila, has a massive population growth. Some of the Western countries have had a much smaller population growth, and that is probably easier to deal with. But some of the more advanced countries are also some of the biggest polluters, and we're also the biggest consumers. So countries like the US, the UK, Europe as a whole, we consume huge amounts of natural resources, be that in terms of cars, computers, TVs, phones, clothing, food, and a whole host of other things, which will, when you add the numbers together, we're just using too much of what the Earth has, and our populations are growing. Like I said, I think the West has been better at maintaining its population balance, but it is still growing too fast. And on top of just reducing our consumerism, we also need to control our population so that certain countries where 3, 4, 5, 6 children is common really needs to be brought down to 1 or 2 children, because over time, those numbers are just going to grow and grow and grow. And that's one of the other things we need to be looking at, is how we help developing countries reduce their population growth. And as a result of reducing population growth, reduce the amount of resources that they are using, and their usage of land and going into forests, decimating forests to help create food for their populations and for the Western populations. How much of our food comes out of developing nations, and how much of that has a detrimental effect upon your own ecosystems?
Yes,
I would have
exactly.
to totally agree with that. Like, one of the things, I don't know if Ken, you had seen Al Gore's documentary, but that was something that really resonated with me when I watched it for the first time. Now, I guess 15, 16 years ago, but I watched it again recently. But he shows that basically it took from, I think he said, from when he was a kid to when he made this, going from a population of 1 billion to 2 billion took whatever amount of years, but then it went to 9 billion. So the graph goes like this. And the same thing when you look at the graph of carbon in the atmosphere, the graph goes like this. So it's that whole thing, that whole in fact, he gets on this kind of this riser to kind of show you, because he's doing this presentation on a stage and he's showing the whole PowerPoint with the graph kind of going like this, but then he takes this riser that rises him up, something they would use in I don't know, construction or something, that rises him up to show you how high this carbon is going and how high the population is going and the population and the carbon is mirroring it. And if we get to this high level, it's like there's a point of no return. If we get to a certain point that the temperature goes up to this point, we're going to end up to a point that we cannot, reverse it. So that's why I think that whole summit said that we need to do something so we don't go above this 1.5 degrees, because if we get to that point, then it's unreversible. So hopefully we can all do these things, especially the countries like United States, the countries like China, the countries that are developed, the countries that are using tons of coal to heat to make electricity. We need to do something to reverse that as soon as possible, because if we don't, we're going to get to the point that it's unreversible.
Yes, exactly, you're right. So as we know that the climate crisis is also accelerating at an unprecedented rate, and we are not ready for it. While the crisis has many factors that play a role in its extension, there are some of biggest environmental problems of our lifetime. So what is the biggest environmental problems in 2021?
Yeah, so I was actually looking at this one website that is it's earth.org, and it goes over the top 10 different things. Some of them, I think is the pollution. It talked about us burning oil, whether it's for heating our homes. Right now, my home is being heated by burning oil. Some people are burning wood to heat their homes. You're burning gas when you're driving your car, or petrol, we call it gas in the United States and whatnot. But basically, we're putting all this pollution into the environment, that we're not only causing this whole problem of the global warming, but we're causing pollution that we're breathing in. And there are basically some places in the world where it's unhealthy to go outside and breathe the air. And that's a huge problem. It's leading to, I don't know how many deaths, but this one website that it's earth.org, talks about it being millions of deaths that are caused by the pollution.
Yes, we are right. So we have some participant also, Fatima, she's from Bangladesh. So Fatima, if you have any question on environment and spoken English, you can ask.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Yes, I can hear you. How are you all?
Good,
Yes,
thank
we
you.
are
How are
doing
you?
Yeah, I'm also good. And I was listening just a few minutes about, you were talking about climate change. And yeah, I was listening you. So I have no any question, especially. So I was listening there. They are talking about the causes of environment, climate change. So I would like to say that if I talk about my country's situation, so there are a lot of things are happening, which is also a reason for climate change. Like the teacher said that burning fossil fuel, as well as sea raising, and other lot of issues. And we are ultimately responsible for this changing. So we are using gas and a lot of things like, brick field, which is a very much dangerous for changing our climate. Because in our third world countries, where we are a lot of burning brick, and as a result, though a lot of what is called some things, our environment are polluted by air, those burning air. So I think so. Not only our countries, it is affecting all around the world. So especially third world countries peoples have to be more conscious about it, have to be aware, and have to learn what is the good for environment and what is bad for environment. I think not only government can do this, can tackle these problems. Our general people have to be alert about it, have to study about it.
I mean, I totally agree with you, because the more people, general people, do something about it or think it's important, the more likely that we're going to tell our governments that they need to do something about it. Because I think that if people are just consuming and they think it's no big deal and they're not doing anything about it, ultimately, like, yes, we can, like myself, I put solar on my roof and I will try to drive less and I'll try to do whatever, but I'm one person. But if I can make my thoughts known to the government and to whatever, to the people that I elect, then hopefully the more and more people that tell the governments that that's important to them, hopefully we'll make some changes, right? But here, like in the US, one of the problems we have is lobbies. So we have a lot of lobbies that are super strong, that if we try to make all these changes for rules on manufacturing and whatnot, then the lobbies that give tons of money, like we have one representative that is from Virginia, and he gets money from the coal industry. So he goes against all of our clean energy things because he doesn't want to lose that money he's getting from the coal industry. And they give him tons of money. Plus, he also thinks about the people in his state that have jobs from the coal industry. So he doesn't want to vote for all these clean energy laws. So I think people like in that state of Virginia, if they cared more about the environment and were able to tell this particular state senator that that is important to them, maybe he would make some changes. But right now, it's like the people in Virginia want their jobs. They want their, because if they lose their jobs, they're not going to have money to pay their bills. And more importantly, I think he's getting tons of money from the coal industry. So that's definitely a huge problem. And like, I also live in a town, Leominster, named after Leominster, England. So we used to be the biggest manufacturer. We used to have a sign that says, "Welcome to Leominster, the plastic capital of the world," right? It's because we were the biggest manufacturer of plastic. So, the pollution that is from manufacturing, from all of like basically the burning to keep those different factories going, right? But also the plastics. Like, plastic is a huge polluter of the world. Like, basically, you can find it in the sands, like microparticles of plastic in the sands of the Sahara Desert. You can find it in Antarctica. You can find it, it's like all breaks down, but it breaks down into things that are like getting into the fish and the ocean and everything. So it's like really, that's like another huge problem, right?
Yes, you're right. There are so many major environmental problems like pollution, global warming, overpopulations, loss of biodiversity, and deforestation.
I think one of the big issues we have in terms of the West is that our consumerism and our throwaway culture. Not just throwaway as in when it breaks, throw it away, don't repair it, but literally throw it away. Or in some respects, export it to other countries. So big scandal we have at the moment is the export, certainly within the UK, and I believe the same scandal is happening within Europe, is that we are exporting used domestic electrical appliances, so fridges, cookers, TVs, under the guise of being recycled or under the guise of being used. We're actually recycling, or we're sending those goods to Romania, in this case, where they're being dumped, they're being used as landfill, because it's cheaper for us to do that than it is to landfill or to recycle. I think we do have this culture in Europe, certainly, and I suspect also in the US, that if it breaks, you just throw it away, you get rid of it. Other countries, I suspect, have much more of a culture of repair because of the costs of buying a new phone. So certainly in the UK, everybody is after the new iPhone 12, 15, whatever, and they will throw the old phone away rather than keeping it for as long as possible, utilizing that product till it breaks, then getting it repaired, then keeping it going to the point where it no longer has a serviceable life. I think we are very much countries or nations who are based around consumerism, around the disposability of goods, which are actually very polluting to create and very damaging to the environment because of the natural resources that they need to be made. So, you know, the precious metals, the glass, the plastic, all these things which we use to manufacture phones, TVs, cookers, whatever it might be, they all have to be extracted out of the earth. And even the process of recycling is still a very polluting process. It's not a clean process. So if you can keep goods in use for as long as possible, you're actually reducing the environmental effect or the effects by some considerable amount. So I think governments really need to prevent companies from building in obsolescence into the goods that they are selling us. And also we need our governments to mandate and dictate to the manufacturers of TVs, washing machines, etc., that these machines should be far more serviceable and repairable and not a throwaway product.
I totally agree. Like, I mean, some of the things that you touched upon, little things like little plastic bags that in my life as a working mother made my life easier to just put all my kids' little things for the lunch in little plastic bags, which are, maybe I could try to reuse them, but most likely not because they're really not very well made, right? But then I'm just throwing them away. To, like, I know most of my friends want to get that next iPhone or whatnot. This is almost 4 years old, but again, here in the US, everybody's after the next iPhone or whatever the newest model of cell phone that's out there. But I've noticed too, like my parents, their washer and dryer it would last for like 30 or 40 years, and you could get somebody to come and repair it, and it was worth the money to pay the repair person to fix it. So now I'm just gonna have one of you right now until I'm done speaking. So now, like I bought myself throughout my adult life washer and dryers, and they only last, maybe the washing machine lasts about 8 years. The dryer for me lasts longer because I generally don't dry my clothes. I usually hang them. Also for like one, the cost of drying them, but two, also for the environment. But basically I've gone through like every 5 to 7 years, I need to buy a new washing machine. And if I was to find somebody to fix it, first of all, they're hard to fix. Number two, it could cost more than just buying a new washing machine. So getting to Ken's point of like this whole idea of like everything's disposable, we either want the newest iPhone. So every 2 years, I'm like, oh, I'm up for, like people say, okay, I'm up for an upgrade. Like, no, you're not up for an upgrade. Basically, that's going to cost you $1,000. But the whole point is that people have this whole throwaway mentality, and they want the newest and the newest of everything, and that is, contributing to it. And the point that, my phone being 4 years old, well, it's basically the battery is now no longer working very good because they built it for that whole thing that it's not meant to last. So basically, after like 2 years, it's not, I'm going to want to get a new one because it's not going to work very good.
Yes, so we should clear to the participant and the viewers. We are talking about environment and spoken English. So if you have any questions, if you are watching, you can ask the questions in the comment section below. And if you have joined, you can ask also to our YouTuber, Russell's and Ken Clay. So Andrei, he's from Russia, and he's so he would like to ask anything, I think. Andrei, hello, Andrei. He has mute. Hello, Andrei, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
For your attention. Well, I'm at the public place. Maybe sound will not fine.
It's fine. You sound okay.
Okay. So it's very interesting to hear about what you're talking. It's very important, I think. And now I'm in center of the Moscow. Maybe and it's freezing cold here, and maybe I don't know about global warming something because it's very, very cold here in Russia. And yes, about the pollution, it's a big problem, I think, and this is a question that need to hear and talk about. So, guys, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate that you invite me to this meeting, and have a nice evening.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for us you joined. And if you have
Thank
any
you.
questions
So,
on spoken English or environment, you can ask to myself and
okay.
Kensley.
Maybe I should connect.
Yeah, sure, you can connect.
yeah, so
Okay.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining. Very interested to talk to you. My children are part Russian, so I don't know if you can see back there, but I have like some Russian things up there. But in any case, you make the point of it being like, okay, it's freezing cold in Moscow. Is there really global warming? But actually, yeah. So I don't know if you noticed, I live in a place that's cold, not as cold as Moscow, but our winters are getting more extreme. Like we are having like winters where we're having more snow than ever, or we're having more ice storms than ever. And so global warming isn't just about like that, oh, in Moscow, it should be like super warm in the winter, right? But the fact that maybe you've noticed that since you were a kid till now, have the winters gotten to be more extreme? Have you had more extreme snowstorms, ice storms? We have, in my last 10, 12 years here, we've had storms that were so extreme that we lost power for one time. Like some people around me, I lost power for a week, but other people lost power for like a month because of the fact that it took down all the snow and the ice, took down our power lines to the point that they had to send trucks from Virginia all the way to Massachusetts because we didn't have enough trucks that the electric company owned to fix all the power lines. Hurricanes, right? Hurricanes that hit the US. We go through the alphabet and we name them, right? And usually maybe we would have like 10 to 15, but sometimes we're getting to the end of the alphabet and now we're having to go on to the Greek alphabet to name those hurricanes, and they're more extreme than they ever been. So sometimes it's not just about, oh, global warming, it shouldn't be winter in Moscow. You should be like being able to wear your t-shirt there, right? But sometimes it's about that more extreme weather, more snow, more ice, more extreme cold. We had last year in Texas snow and extreme cold that basically ended up putting all the electric company in America. There's 3 different grids. One is just Texas for electricity. And the electric grids went offline and people lost power. Some people died. There was this story about this 12-year-old boy that like froze to death in his own home. People were without power, without heat for weeks in Texas because of that extreme cold. And I don't really think of Texas as a cold place, but they do get snow, but it's not a super cold place. It's usually got warmer temperatures. But we had such extreme cold and extreme weather and extreme snow there that it basically, the electric companies there could not function. And they lost electricity. And when people lose electricity, a lot of people lose heat. Like if I don't have electricity, I lose heat because although I burn oil, my furnace runs by electricity. And then it burns the oil.
Yes.
Oh, hello,
Go.
Russell. Yeah, you said that.
Okay, Fatima, go ahead.
Yes. You said that we are facing. You are facing like that a lot of cold in your country, and here in my country we are facing a lot of warm. It's very hot because of climate change. So like that. You are living in first world countries, you are facing cold weathers, and we are facing hot weather in developing country like us. So my question to you that what kind of disease we are facing by climate change? Could you please tell me what kind of disease?
Disasters, you said, or?
Disease. Yeah, disease.
Oh, okay. So I think when I was watching some of the different documentaries, they did talk about more diseases that occur, and I'm not a total expert on this, but that have like diseases that have gotten worse or whatnot from climate change. But I'm not a total expert. I know that when I was watching The Inconvenient Truth on by Al Gore, there was talk about different, like SARS that we had, the last kind of outbreak that was definitely like a climate change thing that kind of contributed to that. Oh, and another thing would be like, okay, so certain places have like Nairobi in Africa, right? Nairobi was actually built where it was because it was above the line of mosquitoes. But it's no longer above the line of mosquitoes because it's warmer, like climate change, like it's gotten so warmer in that country. So now Nairobi is now like diseases that are spread by mosquitoes are West Nile virus and whatnot are going to be more chances of getting those. And then, okay, in the US and other countries, things that are spread by ticks. So we have Lyme disease here in the US, but there's all kinds of other diseases. And because it doesn't get cold enough nights where we have enough frost in parts of the US, you need to have it cold enough to kill enough of the ticks from the prior year. And so each year, because we don't have enough of the cold nights that will really kill those ticks, we have like an overabundance of ticks. And so it's spreading different diseases. One of the biggest ones here where I live is Lyme disease. So every single time we go out for any hike or anything like that, we have to like check ourselves for ticks. And they're these tiny, tiny little ticks that basically would look like a little dot on your skin. But if you don't get that tick removed in 24 hours, you're going to get Lyme disease, which can, it's not like totally life-threatening, but apparently it's very deliberate. It will make your life really hard. I can't say that word.
Yes, exactly.
Debilitating.
That was it. Thank you. I was like,
Not an
I
easy
just had
word,
enough coffee.
debilitating. Yeah, I've just had to look up Lyme disease because it's not something I'm aware of. I think because the UK is one of those countries which has always had a relatively even kind of climate. We tend not to suffer the extremes of cold and extremes of heat. It's much more temperate. But obviously, I've noticed in my lifetime, our winters are generally a lot less cold, and they are definitely getting a lot wetter. Our summers have, over the last few years, have been a little warmer. So that's the kind of thing that I've noticed since being a child. Like I said, because we're a relatively small country and we're surrounded by the sea, our climate is a lot more even. So we don't have those massive changes in the geographical differences that the US will have from east to west, north to south, and obviously the climatic changes you have as a result of being a huge country, or Russia potentially again, a massive land-based country where in summer it's really hot and in winter it's really, really cold. In terms of diseases that we get in the UK, I don't know whether we'd have anything which would severely impact us. I mean, I can certainly see that countries like, say, Africa, and you talked about Nairobi, things like the mosquitoes and malaria could, in fact, take an uplift because of the changing in the climate. We are, of course, able to deal with malaria to some extent, but there will be other diseases which we're not able to deal with and which will have a detrimental effect upon the inhabitants and also the wildlife and the livestock. Because obviously it's not just humans who are being affected, it's animals who are being affected and who are able to cope or not cope with the way their climate and their environment is changing around them. So some animals, insects are able to adapt and adopt the changes faster than others. So I mean, that's something else we have to look at, is how it's not just man, it's not just us humans, it's the effect it has upon other animals and wildlife around us and the environment, how their environments are changing, and what will be the effect if some of the species die, what other animals are reliant upon those other animals to live, to breed, to eat, to survive. So everything has a knock-on effect. We're not just looking at the effects of of global warming or climate change upon man. We have to look at it as a whole for all of the ecosystem.
Yes, you're right. So we are getting so many informations on environment. So I hope I will ask you a question to you on spoken English can play. So because we are learning English as well as we are also getting some informations and some ideas from natives. So my biggest question is that we are learning English and sometimes we are losing our motivations. Every day we are learning, every day we are speaking English. So what are the biggest motivations for speaking English? Can play.
What are the biggest motivations? Well, the fact that you can discuss a topic like this with people from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the sheer fact that you have all learned English or are learning English gives you the ability to communicate with myself in the UK, the US, Pakistan, India, Russia, wherever. So the motivation is the ability to communicate with other people, other nations, in a relatively common language. I would say that for me would be one of my motivations to maintain the language learning of English, but learning other people's language is the ability to speak with other people and communicate with other nations and other cultures.
Yeah, this is the good motivation for all of us. So thank you, Can Play.
I would say I would also add, because I have asked my viewers, what is their motivation, and one of the number one motivations for people is money. I mean, if you learn English, you have so many more options of jobs, right? Because it is basically a language that you can speak all over the world. I watch a YouTuber because I'm trying to learn Spanish, and he's Lucito Comunica from Mexico. And he goes all over the world. He goes to India, he goes to Russia, he goes to Pakistan, he goes everywhere. And I learned so much about the world. But when he speaks to the people in Russia, or he speaks to the people in Pakistan or India, he doesn't speak Spanish to them. He speaks English. Sometimes he'll throw in a word, a Russian word here or there, but he speaks English to them because why? They're probably not likely that they would speak Spanish, but they are very likely to speak some English. So I think one is the fact that you can communicate with people from all over the world, as Ken said, but number two, that you have a chance of earning more money. I've talked to many people that said that in their country, if they want to get any good jobs, jobs in government, jobs in banking, jobs in, the different technologies, they need to know English. So money is a big factor. Communicating to people all over the world. But I think money was one of the number one things for people wanting to learn English, was to better their lives.
Yeah, so
that's fair enough.
Right?
And that's why, and that's why I learn English, because I work in international company, and we provide the virtual telephony, maybe you know. And this is the reason why I start learning English and start to communicate with people in English. And that's 100% true.
Yes.
And maybe I will add some, if you even went to street and in Moscow and trying to ask how can I reach this place or this place, they will ask you in English, because lots of people used to know English and somehow they can explain themselves, and so welcome to Russia.
I think one of the things I've noticed traveling around the world is how useful English is. If you go to Tokyo, if you go to Japan, all of their train system is in Japanese and English. So all the names are in English, which, is a massive, massive help, I think, for not only native English speakers, but many more people who speak English, who have English, even as a basic level, as a second language. So, and I suspect this is, and I have seen this in other countries as well, so many places use or have English place names as well, especially in those places where the alphabet is radically different to the, I'm going to call it the English alphabet. Obviously, within Europe, there are alphabets which are similar. They may have a couple of letters which are slightly different, but alphabets which most people can read. So absolutely, and I have to agree with Rachel. I think that the economy of learning English, what you can gain in terms of economic gain and economic uplift is quite considerable if you speak English. It just means that you are more employable in so many areas, and with so many multinational companies, and I've seen this as well, even they come from countries which are not English speaking, the dominant language, the language within meetings, the language within the office is English. Absolutely always it's English. And yet when you're learning English, you're also improving your possibilities of improving your salary because of that, and your job prospects as a whole.
I mean, I totally agree. I haven't traveled to a ton of places myself. I think Mexico, Finland, and Canada. But through Lucito, I travel, like I watch every place he goes to, and I noticed that all the signs on almost every country he goes to are in whatever language it is there and in English. So like, obviously, it'd be very helpful if you know English and you're traveling to a place like India. Maybe you're from Mexico or you're from wherever you are. Like, if you at least know English, you're going to be able to read the signs and be able to make your way and probably ask. Like, if you're in Russia, you can probably ask for directions in English, even if you don't know Russian.
Yeah, so Hussein wants to ask something, I think.
Yes, well, thank you so much for giving me opportunity to talk here. Do you know what is my big motivation for learning English? I want to make myself a kind of international person. So for that purpose, if you want to make yourself international person, so you will learn the language of international people. So English is a kind of international language. So this is why I want to learn this language.
Right. I think that echoes what Ken was saying, that you can talk to people. You can actually be part of a conversation about the environment, which is going to be something that you need more than just basic English. You can't really be having a conversation about something like this if you're just being able to, order in a restaurant or give directions in a taxi. You need to be able to express your ideas and being able to express them and share your ideas with such a wonderful international group as we are right now.
Yes, exactly. So we are talking about the environment. So I have speaking English in my states. The vast majority people are speaking their regional language, and the official correspondence, we are maintaining the official correspondence in the English language, and we are not talking most time in English, so we are talking in our regional language. So if you couldn't find a good environment, so how can we will speak English very well, very effectively?
Okay, so you're saying like there in India, not a lot of people speak English?
No, lots of people are speaking English. You know that the Indians is the third largest
that's what I thought.
country,
I guess
third
I
largest
misunderstood
country
you.
after US and UK. Indians people are speaking English. So
Okay.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the environment. So if you couldn't find a good environment for speaking English, so it's not possible to improve our speaking English in a few months or few days.
Okay. So I think you're talking about maybe other countries besides India where there aren't a lot of people that speak English, where like maybe you're trying to practice more or get more like, I would imagine. I know I've spoken to some people that in whatever country they're from, that there are not a lot of people that they can actually speak English to. And I would say the best thing would be is to use different programs that are available, apps that allow you to find language partners. Like I use Hello Talk, and I've met people that I can actually speak to. Like when I was in college and I was learning Spanish, well, it was easy for me to speak Spanish to tons of people around, United States, but say you're in some place where there isn't that, you know, now you have the internet. So you have the WhatsApp groups, you have the Hello Talk, you have all kinds of different sites on the internet that can help you find language partners. So I think use those tools. But then I think even better than that too, I mean, it's important to practice speaking, but what I would say the first thing to do is listen, which the internet gives you that ability to listen to spoken English from native speakers. Because before you start speaking, you want to make sure that you have like really listened to the language and developed an ear for the language. So now you have the ability, like I would go to the library and get tapes, cassette tapes, and try to listen to them in my car of native Spanish speakers. But now you can just listen to it on your phone, your Bluetooth. You can listen to native speakers as easy as long as you have access to the internet. And if you don't always have access to the internet, you can download podcasts and listen to them. So I would really suggest first to listen to native speakers, and you have that ability right now with the internet, which is awesome. And really kind of like build up your ear. And then after you really feel like you build up your ear for the language, to go to these WhatsApp groups or the Hello Talk or all these other, if you just type in language exchange or language partners and stuff like that on the internet, you're going to find sites that you can find language partners.
Yes, it's the best idea to find the partners and speak English. The apps can help only. The only ones, there are so many apps like Zoom meetings. We are talking now in Zoom meeting, WhatsApp, Telegrams. We can find native and non-native. Those are good in English, and we can talk with them to improve our speaking. Oh, exactly, you are right. Thank you very much. So, Fatima,
again, I'd have to agree with Rachel. Yeah, I think in terms of I'm learning Spanish as well, and one of the things I do is literally I don't watch English TV. I'm an expert at English, so I don't need to practice my English. So I literally just watch things on YouTube in Spanish. I listen to Spanish radio. I listen to podcasts. And it is amazing how you pick things up just by listening. So find a subject matter which interests you. Try and find videos on YouTube of a similar subject matter. Pick up that, you'll pick up the words about that subject or about that particular thing. And it's just total immersion. If you want to improve your language skills, it is initially, I think, about differentiate. Okay, so my wife is Japanese. And initially, when I was listening to Japanese, it was noise. It was noise. I could not differentiate words. I now can. I know when I'm being told off now because I can differentiate those words because I hear them again and again and again. So I think, you know, when you're listening constantly to your chosen language, you will go from it being noise to actually it being individual words and the ability to differentiate what those words are, to clearly differentiate one word from another word from another word. And surprisingly, that is part of language learning. So absolutely listening, watching, immersing yourself in your chosen language.
I was trying to share my experience that how did I learn English, how did I start to learn. So it's like said Russell and Kane, they said that by listening and by practicing, which is the best way to learn English. So first times when I started to learn English, it was very difficult for me to understand native speakers. So I start to listen some news like BBC, CNN news. Those helped me a lot to understand them. So at first I think that, we have to be a good listener to be a good speaker. So
and I so agree with that. I think one of the things with listening to the news, especially BBC and stuff like that, because they have very good pronunciation, but if you listen to the news and you know what's going on in the world, even if you don't understand everything, you'll be like, oh yeah, I know about that. So you can kind of like catch some of the things. Like I listen to news in Spanish all the time. And I also like read or listen to news in English. So that way I keep up and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about because I just read about that. And as Ken says, I watch almost everything in Spanish. Even I watch some things that were made originally for like maybe something that was originally like a British program, but I changed the language into Spanish because Netflix and stuff allows you to do that. So whenever I'm watching anything for fun, it's also in Spanish, even if it was a program that was initially in English, because of the ability of some of these like Netflix and Hulu to allow you to change the language. So I think trying to like consume everything in that language that you can, like the news programs, the podcast, and finding things that you're interested in. You know, I like shows, like if I like watching a show about murder mystery, I'll try to look for something like that. And then of course watch it in Spanish because that's what I'm trying to watch. So things that'll keep your interest, that'll pique your interest.
Yes, yes. Watching movies and or Netflix series can help also to improve our listening skills as well as speaking skills. So, Richard, do you want to ask some?
I think Richard wants to ask something, and I'll chip in after that.
I want to asking. So here we only talk about pollution, is nothing else.
I mean, that's a good point. There's lots of different things that are environmental problems. I mean, if I'm looking at earth.org, I mean, I think pollution is one of the things that contributes to all the other problems that are in the environment. You know, deforestation is one of the things. Deforestation, though, when they take down all those huge amounts of the rainforest, how do they do it? They burn it, right? So that's causing pollution, but also the deforestation is a huge problem because those trees helped to be able to like take some of that carbon dioxide out of the environment. So you have a good point. There's more than just pollution that's a problem in the environment, but I think like a lot of the things, like the deforestation for one, is that the way that they get rid of those trees is they burn them, which causes pollution. The throwaway mentality of things is like we're just using things once and we're throwing it away. But Richard, do you have any other like things to add about the environmental problems that are not pollution?
Is it tornado? Is it include on pollution? Tornado. Yeah, tornado.
I mean, I think definitely that has to do with like the whole climate change, because like we have way more tornadoes than ever. We have way more hurricanes than ever. We like tornadoes and all these extreme weathers is definitely like rising. And why is it rising? Because if the temperatures are going up and there's more moisture in the atmosphere, the oceans are warmer, that's causing a lot of these extreme weather. So you have hurricanes, there are way more hurricanes than ever, and sometimes hurricanes, like some of the outlaying winds of the hurricanes will cause tornadoes to happen. But there's definitely in the US where I live way more tornadoes than there have ever been. So I think all those extreme weathers like are rising.
Yeah, because car is pollution on the air. Is smoke.
I mean, smoke is definitely like all the burning of everything that we use to like heat our homes, to run our factories and everything. That's like, you know, throwing up pollution into the atmosphere too. That's you know, causing that ozone to get thicker, basically prevent the, you know, the sun rays come in to the earth. They help warm our earth to keep it warm enough. But some of them were supposed to go out, but now it's bouncing back. So that's the whole like greenhouse idea.
Yeah.
What are some solutions to toxic dumping in our oceans?
I mean, I think some of the solutions is like trying to not have this throwaway mentality, like Ken was talking about, having things that last longer, that don't have to be repaired, that don't have to be not repaired, but don't have to be replaced. You know, I was talking about how I use these one-time plastic bags, but there's I just was listening to a story about this company called Stasher. And basically this woman came up, she was a mother and she didn't want to be throwing away all these bags. So she came up with this whole idea of making these silicone bags that would last forever. that can be used, like you can freeze your food in them, you can store your food in them, whatever, but they'll last forever. But they're very expensive. If you buy one of these bags that are like a quart, it's like $12. Well, I could buy 1,000 of these throwaway bags, right? But here's the thing, if I buy that one for $11, it lasts forever. So kind of trying to look at things that are reusable that we can just not throw away. Like instead of using a throwaway mug, I use a metal one that I'll just keep, right? So I think the idea of things that are making manufacturers, like governments saying you have to make your things last longer, people having the mentality of buying the reusable things and not throwing away. Those are some of my solutions. I'm not an expert on the environment. I just am very passionate about it, and I think we need to do things. But those are things that I can tell you that I think we could do.
There's some regulations coming in within the UK in terms of plastic disposable cutlery, which they're going to ban in the very near future, and that's going to be happening also throughout Europe. I mean, one of the things I noticed when I've been in the States is in hotels is the use of plastic plates and cups at breakfast. I was literally stunned that there were no proper cutlery and no proper plates. Everything was plastic, everything was disposable. And it was like shocking for me from a country which in itself, has a poor record in terms of in some of the disposability of certain items, to go to a country like America where everything was disposable. It's just like nothing was washed, nothing was cleaned. It was just get another plastic cup.
And it's gotten worse. When I was a kid, when we would have our lunch at school, we would have a tray. It was a plastic tray, but it was always washed. And we would have silverware, and we would have our food put on that tray. And at the end of the day, at the end of the meal, we'd bring it back to the kitchen, and they had dishwashers, and all the stuff went into the dishwasher and then was reused the next day. But now it's all styrofoam trays, plastic little utensils and paper, and all of that gets thrown away. And we have this whole program in the US as like a free lunch program in a lot of places, that we're required to give all the kids lunches, even if they don't eat it. And they everything gets thrown away. Food, which is a big problem too, food waste, especially in the US. But all of that styrofoam never breaks down. I think they're changing it up now that they're using more cardboard, which at least would break down. But it was all these styrofoam trays, and I work in a school, so I see that firsthand. Everyone going in and grabbing their styrofoam trays of the food that has their plastic silverware, and I'm guilty of sometimes using it myself because I forget to bring my own because they don't have it there, and throwing it away. Like usually I'm washing the plastic silverware and reusing it because I feel really bad about it. But yeah, that's a big problem in the US, is all of this plastic stuff that we use one time and we throw away, and it's in the biggest problem, I think, is in the school systems.
Yes, you are right. The plastic is the biggest problem because it was produced every year, and the wonder materials popularity has increased ever since. So unfortunately, markets incentives of post-use processing haven't kept up the productions, so which resulting in one of the biggest pollutions and the environmental problems. So my question is that what we can do to reduce the plastic pollutions?
Well, I think certainly our governments need to make sure that the producers of goods use as little plastic as possible. I mean, when we go to supermarkets, all of our fruit comes in plastic bags. As a child, when we used to go to the shops, we used to pick up a paper bag, a brown paper bag, put fruit and veg in, weigh it. So I think our governments really need to start to enforce rules and regulations with regards to one-use plastic. And supermarkets and food suppliers and providers need to change what they are using in terms of packaging the goods, to reduce the packaging to a minimum. A celebration we have in Europe is Easter, and we get these chocolate eggs, and they're about that big, but they come in a cardboard box, which literally is 4 or 5 times bigger than the product. Okay, but if you think about it, in a 1 meter cube or a 1 square yard cube, if you only get 20 eggs because they're packed in a box, which is 9-10 times bigger, if you reduce the packaging to just big enough to protect the product, all of a sudden you get 100 eggs in that 1 cubic meter or 1 square meter. There is too much packaging of all types, be it one use or recyclable. We need to reduce the amount of packaging that the West, and I'm going to say the West generally, uses when packaging food products and also electrical products. So if we just reduce the amount of packaging, that in itself would be a massive start. That would allow us to probably transport more goods in a given space because there's less packaging. And I'm going to go back to something which was said before, food waste. Food waste is it's a massive problem. And within Western society, within a sort of, first world societies, food waste is something which is not really thought of as a problem, but it is, because the amount of energy, phosphates, fuel used by tractors, food processing, shipping to and from the farms to the supermarket, from the supermarket to the home, from the home to a landfill site, all of that takes up valuable resources and takes up valuable fuel and creates more pollution. So we need to reduce how much we are using and how much we are throwing away.
Yes, yes.
And I think it goes like, if you look at earth.org for 2021, it says the biggest thing that is a problem for the environment is poor governance. And it goes back to what everything Ken was saying. And it's like, basically, if our government's like, if England is saying, we're going to make a rule or law saying you can't use this plastic cutlery, people can't buy it, right? Like, I can't go to the store and buy it if I live in England. But if they don't make that law, people are still going to buy it. So people, there might be some people like me that say, I'm not going to buy that plastic cutlery anymore, even though it's convenient and it makes it easy when I have guests over. I don't have to do all these dishes and stuff. But if the government says you can't buy it, then I can't buy it. And here in the U.S., like, we have some laws, but they're kind of like state laws. So like in California, like, okay, no more plastic bags at supermarkets. So that's improve things in California. But the rest of the U.S., whenever I go to the grocery store, now I try to bring my own bags, these reusable bags. But if I forget, not a problem. They got these lovely plastic bags. They're not really lovely. They're horrible. But I don't have to worry about it. I forgot my bags. Last night I went to the grocery store and they put all my stuff in plastic bags, which are, end up, I throw them away. But again, like, because there's no good way for me to recycle them. But they also end up in the oceans. They end up in the rivers. They end up all over the place. And getting back to the food waste, another problem with the food waste is that it ends up, some food waste can be like compost and everything, but it ends up causing like problems with like contributing to the CO2, because when you have the food, it's like when it's decomposing, it ends up causing like gases or whatnot, like pollution into the environment. I'm not a total expert on it, but there's a really good book. I think it's called Waste. I'm not exactly sure, but it's all about this whole food waste thing. Here in the US at Walmart, you can go buy this fresh, like basically like chicken pieces or whatever at Walmart and eat it, but here's the thing, every hour or every 2 hours, they throw it all away because it's not fresh. They don't even give it to like a local food shelter, a local homeless shelter. They just throw it away because it's not fresh, right? And so we have all these buffets and all these places that will sell you all this food that's constantly made fresh so that you can order it right there. And every hour or two, they throw it away.
Yes. The biggest environmental problems in our list also the food and water insecurity. So we have food surplus, that is waste, and we need to better job directing it towards places it needs. So it's also a big issue. So what we can do for our environment, it is most important, because the peoples are wasting their foods, and it's also the very biggest problems for our environment.
I think you've hit it there in terms of what can we do? Just not use as much. I mean, water, again, going to something as simple as water, which pours out of the tap, fresh, drinkable in every European country. in the States, you know, there are many countries where where you cannot drink the water because it's undrinkable. So you're using bottled water. Why in the West are we buying water, which is more expensive than petrol, gas, the Americans? You know, a litre of water in the UK is more expensive or as expensive as petrol for our cars. Yet I can go and turn my tap on and the water is 100% safe, 100% drinkable. But to get that water 100% safe and drinkable, it has to be processed. That process uses fuel, uses energy, uses natural resources, so that when I drink water, it is safe. Everything we use, so the less water I use, either drinking, food preparation, shower, washing, the less water I use means less natural resources have been used to produce that. So, and water in many countries is a big, big problem, not only just in terms of the scarcity, but the quality, the drinkability of that water. But yes, here in the West, here in Europe, in the UK, and I suspect also in the US, bottled water, shipping bottled water around in trucks, into shops, into stores. Why? Why are we doing that? We're being sold this pup of we need to be drinking bottled water when the water coming out of our taps is absolutely 100% safe, 100% drinkable, but we're being sold this need to drink bottled water. I don't get it. I don't get it. I rarely drink bottled water. I just find it a very strange concept, drinking bottled water. We're being sold something which we don't actually need. We're being sold a lifestyle. We're being sold an image that it's good for us to be drinking bottled water when tap water is absolutely 100% drinkable in Western countries and in the US.
Yeah, the tap water is for drinking in Indian people. So they are suffering so many diseases.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like here we have a company in Maine and it's called Poland Springs. So they sell this water that is spring water that is supposed to be so much better than the tap water. And, you know, where I work, we have every like 2 weeks, we have a truck come in and he delivers big jugs of it that we stick on this like dispenser that gives us our fresh Poland Spring water from the springs of Maine. So we are sold this whole idea that if we get water from our sink, it's really not from our tap, that it's really not safe to drink, that it's better if we buy this bottled water. I do not buy that. Like it very occasionally, you know, I might be out somewhere that I just need to buy a bottle of water, but I generally don't. I drink the water from the tap. When I'm at work, I drink the water from the tap. But it is like I have some friends that are, I think they're from, I have a friend from Panama, and she will buy the water because I think in Panama, the water was not safe to drink. So she still believes the water here in the US is not safe to drink. So she buys the bottled water. So I think it's like probably trying to educate people that the water is safe to drink, because we are sold the whole idea. Like there's these commercials and they show this beautiful spring in Maine that's like totally clean and everything. And the idea is like, if I buy this water, I'm going to be healthier if I buy this Poland Spring water, for instance.
Yes. So we have also some participants. Maybe you should give a chance to them. So Sharside, if you would like to ask any questions on environment and spoken English, you can ask. So Fatima, do you want to ask anything?
Hi, Lila. Hi. Sorry, hi, Lila. How are you?
Okay. Okay, Fatima, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask Ken and Russell that we are talking about, and they are giving us a lot of explanations about climate change. And after hearing all this, I would like to ask them, in which country will suffer a lot in futures by climate change, and what would be the result? So what kind of things and which country will suffer a lot by climate change?
I mean, I'll go first, and then Ken can, like, from all of my kind of watching documentaries and reading, I think the countries that are going to suffer the most are countries like India, countries like Bangladesh, where I believe you're from, Bangladesh, countries like that have basically their sea level is very low, or they have a huge amount of people that live near sea level, at or near sea level, because when the sea rises, it's going to those countries where huge populations live at or near sea level are not going to have a place to live, and they're going to have to move someplace very, very quickly. So I think that is where there's going to be the biggest impact. What about you, Ken?
Kind of, yeah, following on from you, I think where you have those countries, probably the poorest of the countries, which have huge populations, which are close to sea level, where if the sea rises to a certain point, that's going to be pushing people further and further. It's going to be cramming people together, and they're going to be, I think they're going to be not only fighting for space, but fighting for food, fighting for fresh water, and that will have a detrimental effect upon their neighbours as well. Certainly, I mean, there are quite a lot of islands around the world who have the potential to be inundated, to be flooded, to be lost because they're going to get covered in water. And what will happen to those populations? Where are the residents of these places going to go? A lot of Western society, a lot of Western countries can probably financially deal with upping sticks and moving people or trying to fight the problem. The poorest of those countries are not going to be able to do that. I mean, the UK, there are certain maps showing the UK, if the sea level rises, 30 centimeters a foot, 2 foot, or sort of 60 centimeters, what will happen? How much land will go under water? And it's actually quite shocking, because the UK will lose a huge chunk of its usable land space. And that will have a knock-on effect for what is a relatively small population in comparison to many other countries. We can only squash onto so much land. We can only provide. Britain is a country which does not produce enough food to supply the population. We do not supply. We import so much of our food and natural resources. And if we cannot supply enough food to our own people, we're going to have to be bringing it in from elsewhere. But if those countries are also suffering because they have lost land mass, they have lost areas which are potentially areas where crops are grown, where cattle are reared, they are not going to be able to provide the UK with enough food to supply our population. So the knock-on effect from one country to another country is difficult to comprehend, and I suspect we will only start to comprehend it when we start to have the effects felt, as in not enough food for us to supply our people here in the UK. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to comprehend for many people. I suspect places like India and Bangladesh may very well have a grasp, because they understand when huge areas of land are underwater, that there is no food coming out of that. People have to be moved, people have to be fed. There's a massive population which has been displaced because of the floods. So yeah, I can't comprehend the problems that the UK will have, and as a consequence, I can't comprehend the problems which other countries will have as a result also.
Same here.
Yeah.
I think the US, I've seen things like, Florida would be underwater, New York, Manhattan would be underwater, but again, we would be able to move people, we'd be able to probably figure it out. And then later on, we might have some trickle down effect. But I think it's like when the whole coronavirus started, there was all this it's going to be the great equalizer, but it wasn't. Like, certain countries have definitely suffered more than others, right? And I think it's the same thing with the pollution. It's not the great equalizer. There's definitely going to be the countries that are we developed, like England developed first, and you have United States and all, what they call the developed world. we will not suffer as much in the beginning for sure. So we'll not be a great equalizer. There'll be like this trickle down effect where there's countries that have these huge populations next to sea level, and they'll be like pushed inland, and they'll be crammed, and there'll be problems with farming, and then there'll be problems that we suffer. But that's where I really think countries like the United States, countries like Britain, countries like Russia, countries like China, and so on, that have more resources can do more to basically do more to help the rest of the world. Because bottom line is that if we don't do more, like if the US doesn't do more, where we are 20%, or I don't know what the exact percent of the population we are, like a small percentage of the actual population of the world, but we are a super small percentage of that whole world, but we are polluting more than probably any country in the world. I looked at the statistics last night, but I don't remember them. But bottom line, if countries like the US don't do something about it, we're going to be causing problems for others. So I will definitely take ownership. I am not totally in charge of it, but I will definitely take ownership and do as much as I can. But that's the problem started here. The problem started in Britain. The problem started in the countries that were first to develop, the first to industrialize. And that's where the solutions have to really start first. And I wish that in the US we were doing more like Britain's, like, okay, no more plastic cutlery.
Okay, thank you very much for streaming
I
with
did
us.
see that Richard put a question about how does urbanization contribute to water pollution? And that's a really good question. I'm not a total expert on that. I would say, like, I actually watched a number of documentaries, and I would say the closer that people live together, the more likelihood that things are running off into the water supply and stuff. Like I'll say, like here in the US, many people fertilize their lawns, which isn't really like the urbanization. That's really like kind of people living in a city, but things that are running off into the water supply definitely affect water pollution. I would say urbanization. I would think that like more people living closer together, there's more chances of people like probably littering or more cars or more like things that would be contributing to air pollution. But I think that might possibly trickle down to the water supply. I don't know if Ken Clay, do you have any other idea? Because I'm not a total expert on that one. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, you talk. I mean, one of the things obviously we have is farming and fertilizers, nitrogen being washed down into the rivers and the streams, and then those being washed down into the rivers, major rivers, and then out to sea. And obviously, those fertilizers affecting the ecosystem as a result of the increase in nitrogen. So things like algae suddenly growing because they've got a lot more nitrogen in the water. That then closing down or reducing the ability for other species to live in those rivers. So fish, crustaceans, whatever it might be in the rivers and the on the seashore. So just the pollution which happens in cities then being washed into water courses, because obviously here in the UK, I don't know how it works in other countries, but we have dirty water. So your toilet waste, your kitchen sink waste goes off to be treated. Water which comes down onto the roads, off your roofs, and goes into a separate system which is not treated, but that water is picking up pollutants all the time, either off the roads or off the roofs, and that's all being washed into rivers. It's not being cleaned. So a less dirty water is being washed into our water courses, into our rivers, and eventually that ends up in the sea. So plastic bags, bottles, rubbish is all being washed out to sea. So yeah, I mean, I think that talking just about water, that's a problem we all have. We've either got to upgrade our 100, 150-year-old water systems, which we have in the UK in many of our major cities, to actually also treat stormwater, not normal drain water, rather than effluent, dirty water. We need to, if we're to clean up our own act, we need to start by looking at what we wash into our rivers, because that eventually ends up in the sea. And again, we know how much plastics and pollution end up in our seas, and eventually, that comes back in terms of our food, because so many of us eat fish, or use the seas as a form of we're using the seas to either produce fish, because we're actually farming fish in Europe, or we're fishing fish, and that those fish are eating or digesting broken down plastics, which eventually ends up in us. So yeah, the problem is a massive, it's a spider's web of a problem. It's a spider's web of a problem, because one thing affects something else, affects something else, affects something else, affects something else. It's not just a problem on its own. This is not a problem on its own. It's a massive spider's web of a series of problems which are all interlinked.
Yeah.
I also see that you're asking about carpooling as a way to reduce air pollution, and what stops people from carpooling to work. So yes, definitely, if you carpool, like here in the US, we don't have a lot of public transportation. Depends, like if I live in the city like Boston or New York, I can easily take the bus or train or subway to work. But where I live in Leominster, Massachusetts, and I have to drive. There is no bus, there is no train, there is no subway to where I work in Worcester. So I have to drive each day, and it's about a half-hour drive. So I am definitely, and I can't really carpool because there isn't anyone else that I work with that's going there. But definitely, if people have the opportunity to carpool, that's definitely going to help, because there'll be less people. And less cars, right? So they have, in the US, we do have, like on certain highways, there's carpool lanes. So if people have more than one person in their car, they can drive in the carpool lane. I don't see too many people in those lanes. In the US, lots of people like to have their own car, because then when they get out of work, they can just go do what they want, and they don't have to like, oh, I'm carpooling, now I got to drive home because, I have to drive Susie home, and we made that agreement, right? So I think there's that big individualism that in the US that causes people not to do it. And then I think the bigger solution besides carpooling would be to build out more public transportation in places like the US. Have the ability that I could take the bus or the train or the subway or something to work, which I don't have that opportunity to do so. So I definitely think that would help. I don't know if, Ken, you could...
Yeah,
I'll jump in for one last
so...
moment before I go. Yeah, I mean, obviously, most of British cities have a very good public transport system. And Europe as a whole, a lot of their cities, again, have excellent transport systems. Land is expensive, so, we're not as spread out as, say, the US in terms of our residential areas. But again, just things like having shops which are local, which you can walk to, or which the drive is closer to. So you're not having to drive half an hour to a supermarket. You may be only having to go a short distance. One would reduce the number of miles or kilometers driven, the amount of fuel used to drive those kilometers, those miles, though that would help, but it involves a different kind of thought in terms of how, potentially with the US certainly, how you organize your cities and the reintroduction of local shopping areas, things where people can potentially walk to or are closer to the vast majority of people, and people do not have to drive to. I mean, America is famous for its drive-through culture, so drive-through McDonald's, drive-through banks. I mean, the concept of a drive-through bank in the UK is just an incredible concept. It's just the idea of going to a bank and driving through is, although drive-through McDonald's, we get drive-through sort of fast food places, is now relatively common in the UK, but we don't have as big a culture of driving, but we still have a large car population. But we do have fantastic public transport systems in most of our cities, which does help. And I think that's, again, pretty universal across most of Europe. Public transport is is one of the first things that most city planners look at, how we improve our public transport infrastructure. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to make a move. Fantastic chat. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining with us. And please see you around. We have a plan. We also arrange another live streams again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll plan another one.
Yes. So
For
if you have any
sure.
questions, you can ask guys to Russell.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
couple
you
more
will-
questions.
I think Fatima on a special thing.
Okay, I heard that Ken said that for a short distance we shouldn't drive car because it is creating pollutions. Yeah, that's right. So my question to you that Russell, which countries are more responsible for climate changing? Which countries?
Again, I think I tried to answer this, but I'll say it again. I think the biggest polluters, the biggest ones that are responsible for the global warming, for the climate change, are U.S. But I mean, it started in Great Britain with the Industrial Revolution, which then moved to the United States. But again, I think Russia and I think China is huge now. China has greatly grown with their manufacturing, and now a lot of new coal to use for heating, for manufacturing and stuff like that, for electricity production. So I'm going to say again, the countries that have developed more, that have developed first, are the ones that are the guiltiest, the ones that are responsible for more of the pollution. And we're, again, the ones that, especially the U.S., I'll say that we are the smallest amount of people responsible for the most amount of pollution. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I will say I'm from the United States and we are guilty. Not me personally, but I do, I have used all those reusable or one-time use plastic bags when my kids were small because it made my life easier. I'm making changes to improve, but I'll tell you that there are a lot of people that here in the US that are just this throwaway economy that always want that next iPhone, and I have no problem with just all these one-time use things. So I'm hoping that answers your question. So, but I think if you want to, after the stream is done, if you want to put questions, I will suggest anybody that didn't get your answer, didn't have a chance to ask what you wanted to put your questions inside of the comment section of Lila's stream. And I will try to answer them later by typing them when I can. So please use that comment section. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure you share the video. Make sure you tell everybody to subscribe to Lila's channel, and put your questions, and I will read them and I will answer them as best as I can. But thank you so much. We will do this again. Next time we'll be streaming to my channel. We'll do this again once or twice a month, and it's been awesome. I love the conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so don't forget to subscribe to Russell's channels also, Dreaming English YouTubers. He really is doing great work for all of us. We are learning from her, so she's doing really great work. So I appreciate that you are doing really such kind of works. So thank you so much, guys, for streaming with us. See you around soon. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.